Hello, and a big welcome to all of you out there who are watching and listening to this podcast today. We have this very special friend today, Debbie Mooty. Welcome to you. So nice to see you.
Thank you so much, and I'm so glad to be here.
We did it at last.
Yes, exactly. How true, how true. Yes.
So, please tell us about what are you doing and about your horses and everything.
Okay. I still have a riding program, and we're located in Buchanan, Virginia. And I still work with children of all ages and different challenges. I'm a retired special ed teacher, over 40 years teaching. The horses came into my life very early, age 3. Apparently, my mother said I was trying to pet everything that I could find. So I grew up with horses. I was very fortunate. I grew up in Blacksburg, Virginia, and I had a lot of experience and wonderful people in my life from Virginia Tech and 4-H that helped me, gave me a good start. I took that knowledge, and again, I want to give them reverence because they were the ones who trained me. And in 1981, 82, I moved to Salem, took a part-time job at Salem High School, and met Larry Hicks at the Virginia Baptist Children's Home. And what happened from there was I had my 2 horses, and one of my girlfriend's horses ended up moving the 3 of them to the Baptist home to give lessons. Now, I don't know what in my 22-year-old mind made me think I could do that, but that's what I did. And I think about it now with all the stuff I have and the certifications and everything I've gone through since then. I don't know if I was brave or stupid. I'm not really sure which one, but
It
took
doesn't matter. You did it.
the it seems amazing now to me that I did that, but we started out with the 3 horses, 2 saddles, and kind of 3 bridles. And we decided to do a 4-H group to help teach the children, of course, because they have a wonderful project book system. And I knew about that because of my association in Blacksburg. So we started a 4-H group, and the first meeting we had 32 people show up, so 32 kids. So to say that I was a little bit overwhelmed, I do remember that part very, very well, and started out obviously with a lot of horsemanship. But the beautiful, beautiful thing about the whole deal with that was I was young. I had a lot of energy, which, God gave me that for a reason. That's all I got to say. Because we would go out basically every chance I had and every time I wasn't working, and we would do something with the horses. And it was wonderful. The horses were in the field at the beginning with cows. The Baptist home really was a working farm in 1982, which is incredible because, of course, it no longer is. It was a wonderful opportunity, and I always wanted to work with kids. I'm not sure why. I don't know where that came from, but it's just been my passion in life. These kids were almost as old as I was. Some of them, I was like 22, and they're like 18 and 19. But it all worked out, and that's where I started. We built the program up by people loaning me horses or people that wanted to board there, that sort of thing. And we ended up having a show team and a drill team. I got involved with Virginia Horse Center. I got involved with Green Hill. I got involved with all the local associations that show. I had good friends that we would haul horses to shows, and they would let them ride their horses. So we had a very active club back in the day. The most important thing about that, though, is I always tell everybody, is that I used to stand in the rain with those kids. And what I mean by that is when things were bad for them, and some of those kids had really been through a lot, I was the one that would stand out in the rain, sometimes at the end of a lead rope with the kid, and work through it. And I did that on a couple of occasions, and at least on one occasion, probably helped a young man realize that he did not want to kill himself. And so I started to see the power and the healing
Mm.
involved with horses, and the sense of inclusion that my kids felt, particularly my kids from the Baptist home, because I had community kids as well. I had parents that understood what I was doing and would bring their children to me. They could well afford to go to some other barn, and there were other barns available at that time, but they would come to me because what they wanted their kids to learn was something different than just riding. So we helped heal a lot of folks, and I would say even some of my community folks. We all healed together a couple of times. I had children, I worked for mental health services, and I had children come from the city. Some of those kids had never seen a horse. I mean, not up close and personal. A lot of them learned to ride. Oh, excuse me. And
That's
that was also a beautiful thing. We ended up on the cover of a state magazine one year with my kids, and so I had a very diversified, different group of children, but they all learned to ride and they all learned to love the horses, and I really think they all learned to really love themselves. And particularly those first children, then, well, teenagers that I worked with, they went on to own their own businesses. One of them, which is
mm.
really funny because she was a handful, she went on to be a probation officer and helping youth in Maryland. I've just had kids. I had two kids who started a construction business and they helped with the Olympics in Atlanta. And they were so excited. They would call me and tell me what they were doing. So it's been a wonderful legacy. And some of those first folks that I knew back in the 80s are still good friends. And we keep up. And I have children, of course, that are grown and married and have their own children. And I'm at the age now where I guess I'm a grandmother, but it's all wonderful. And I ran into a deputy sheriff here in Botetourt a couple of weeks ago at one of the schools, and he said, "I know you." And I was like, "Okay." And he used to ride with me like in 1994. And I laughed. I looked at him. I said, "Well, you turned out pretty well." He said, "Oh, yeah. My mom made me come to you because we used to do these things called work days." And I have to laugh. You probably couldn't even do this now. But we would do work days and the kids would come out and we would just work. I mean, like we rode some, but we would work. We would actually do barn chores and stuff. And even the kids who paid for lessons would come out and help. I look at that now and I realize I did it because I needed the help, but it was wonderful for those kids. They learned how to operate and manage a horse farm.
Mm.
And I still do that. Every winter, we do horse science. I did 2 camps this year. One of the main things I emphasize to my kids is the work and the care of the horse. That is what makes it. And my kids, the ones I've served currently and the ones I've served in the past, I think they've gotten as much out of that as they have the riding, because the love and the compassion for the horse comes number one. I do not tolerate anything less than that in my program. It's not about me, me, me. It's about what you and your horse can do as a team. And I've I've never deviated from that. If and I've lost students over that. And
Mm.
that's fine
Yeah.
because some of them have had to go their own path, and sometimes that's worked out for them, sometimes it hasn't. But I personally can't tolerate that. So, but I think my kids are better off for it. And the parents, particularly that understand what I'm doing, they certainly agree with me. So, been doing
Yeah.
this for a very long time, and I continue to see, even though the kids I serve now for the most part, particularly on show team, are very middle class kids with great parents, but it is a huge part of their life and it's a huge part of their development. And like I said, I work with all abilities, and I had a little kid take his third lesson yesterday, and he's kind of a high needs individual. And when he got off of this older horse we have named May, and he actually jogged a little bit yesterday at the end of the lesson. At one point, he wanted to get off. So we got through that. At the end of the lesson, he got off and he ran and gave his mother a big hug. And his mother was just, she just couldn't believe it. She said, he absolutely loves this. That's the positive power of healing with horses,
Mm.
um, is to give that child a connection there, um, an unconditional love, I guess, and unconditional acceptance. So I see horseback riding programs in general as being that way. And then if you will just be kind enough to reach out to folks, it's amazing what you can do. So I don't know that I'm unique. It's just that I am unique in that I've always done that. That's not a new thing for me.
Yeah, because you must have been one of the first persons who made therapy with horses. Um, I,
I, I
I I think it wasn't that common at that time when you started.
It wasn't, and I was attending Radford University, and when I did my special ed degree, I actually did a senior project on therapeutic riding, and I did well with it, but it was pretty impressive that a lot of people didn't know what I was talking about, and and I always tell
Yeah.
people I'm not therapy like path certified or any of that. Mine is more the horse mental health connection and the opportunities there. Um, and sometimes that's all people need is they need an opportunity.
Hmm.
And I really preach inclusion because, of course, I'm special ed teachers. Of course, I would preach that. But I've seen amazing things with these kids that I've even gone to meetings as an advocate for special needs kids, and I have one that rides with me, and the teachers just cannot believe the change in this child. I mean,
Hmm.
it's just been amazing. And again, I've got to emphasize those horses give you that unconditional acceptance. A lot of these kids don't feel that on a daily basis. It's a
No.
huge game changer. So, and that's really gratifying, not just for me, but for my kids who help me, because my show team was out yesterday teaching this youth class I have. And we really had to work through some moments with the one child because he's brand new, third lesson, right? He's out there playing games with a bunch of other kids who've been doing this. And the beautiful part about that is I think everybody came out of that understanding a little bit more. And I am so proud of that because the more we accept people and their differences and their challenges, the more we can come to understand them and love them and realize when he got off that horse, his smile was bigger than his whole face. I mean, nobody last night could escape seeing that and just, we all walked in just so happy and I think grateful that we were able to help him like that.
Mhm.
So it's a huge deal. I'm sure you could do it with other animals. I think animal therapy in general is awesome. I know dogs that go in the hospitals. That's a great,
Mhm.
you know, I personally had experiences with that. But there is something to be said about an animal that weighs 1,000 pounds or
Mhm.
more, because we have a draft horse,
Yeah.
and you can ride it and pet it and groom it and actually make it do things, and it works with you, and it has its own moments, and my
Mhm.
kids have had to work through that. Um, it goes a long way in teaching acceptance. There's no doubt. And we stop sometimes, particularly on show team, and we talk about why we do this or we do that. And we talk about some things that we don't do. And I have the kids trained to do like pulse and respiration and to check for signs of stress and injury. And again, just teaching that compassion that I start a lot of lessons out with, this is not a bicycle. This is not a motorcycle. This is not a
Mhm.
car. Okay. And helping my kids understand there's emotions and physicality and health issues that we have to consider. And I'm proud to say that my kids are the ones that go to horse shows and they don't ride all over the place and they don't do extra things. I don't allow it, but they don't because they know it's not the best thing for the horse. We do the warm up, we do our classes, we're respectful of the horse and how much stress we're putting on the horse. And I think that's huge because I don't know. Sometimes it really worries me because I don't know how much of that is taught in general anymore. I mean, I guess it is, and maybe I'm missing it. Some of my most all of my kids are very compassionate, but some of them seem almost surprised when I talk about those things. It's like the limits on the horse, and of course, some of them are just young and they don't understand it. I mean, you see it on TV, and everybody's always galloping, right? I mean, that's and they come out to ride, and I'm like, well, we don't really actually do that all the time. So but it's a wonderful teaching tool to teach kids, again, compassion.
Mhm. So, how are you still able to get all these kids out and work for you?
uh, we have, first of all, we have a supportive environment. One thing I've always known about kids is that if you truly love kids and you truly want to help them and you're on their team, they are totally on your team. And I noticed this in teaching even more so than horseback riding, because I haven't had really anybody to compare myself to. But in my building, I had a principal one time that I didn't particularly get along with, to be honest. But the one thing she always said about me was, you really love those kids, Mrs. Moody. And, there's people that teach that love the kids, but at the end of the day, that's their job and they go home. And I just carry mine in my heart all the time. So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think there's almost a sense of primal connection because my brother-in-law owns a working farm, and we move hay and we fix fences and we cut hay. And so sometimes when the kids come out for horse science, we go move hay, and I let them problem solve. I let them, because they're little, and these bales of hay weigh what,
Mm.
75 pounds. I let them problem solve, and it's wonderful to watch them work through that and to work together. And here's the key: a lot of my kids didn't know each other at all. Some of them maybe had seen somebody at school or knew their brother, and I have kids from the city still. I have kids from Botetourt County. I have kids from all over. They're really a unit. They learn, particularly through my horse science. I keep bringing that up because it's probably one of my favorite classes, to work together and to get the task done. And I supervise, but I let them problem solve. And other than, of course, I wouldn't let them get hurt. I let them work through it. How do you move a 75-pound bale when you probably don't weigh 75 pounds? How do you do that? And my kids have figured a lot of things out through that. I think kids want to explore and learn that
Yeah.
way. I really do. I saw that in my own classroom, and I did a lot of things differently. When I taught elementary, I probably had the messiest classroom in the whole school. I'm really sorry to all the janitors I worked with because they were wonderful. And I was always bringing in clay and mud, and we were making villages, and we were just always doing hands-on stuff. And my classroom had kites in it and all kinds of stuff. And I so that's the thing I love about farm school. And I kind of do a farm school, particularly in the winter when we can't ride as much. We'll ride bareback and do some balance exercises. And I do have a bigger horse that we can vault on. We'll do stuff like that. But I don't do lessons per se like I do the rest of the year. And then for like another hour and a half, we do farm stuff. Like we even went our farm is spring fed. We even went up in the winter. You can see it. You can kind of see where the spring bubbles up. Well, none of my kids had ever seen that. And we hiked up one day and they were just fascinated. And I said, this is where your groundwater comes from, guys. So it's really cool. We've had the creek tested. We wanted to see what was in the creek. We did that. Kids love the creek. And in the summer, they play in it. We've gone all over the farm fixing fence, and they're just so amazed at how beautiful nature is because the farm's very, very pretty. My brother-in-law really bought a nice place. All of those things are great discoveries for these kids. They're young, and even though some of them live here in Botetourt, we have more and more subdivisions and less farms. And a lot of these
Mm.
kids, this is their only exposure, but they absolutely love it. And they get to ride in the back of my truck, which is a great experience. Some of them haven't done that. So just little things like that, but it means so much. They really become good friends, and they really bond over this common love of taking care of the horse and learning all this stuff. And so I guess I attract kids that want to do that. But I think on the other hand, I have a couple of kids that I don't think they knew they wanted to do that. And when we started
Yeah.
doing that, they were like, wow, this is really great.
Mhm.
So it's a combination.
Yeah, and let their fantasy work, and let them work it out themselves. That's a great idea. I think we are way too over our children today, and we have to occupy them. We have to put them, now you're doing this, now you're doing this. Um, I know I have spoken to a lot of people about my childhood. I was a lot alone with the horses and all that. And everybody said, wow, what a childhood. Yes, yes, because I could do what I wanted to. And
Yeah.
I worked a lot with the horses. So that's a satisfaction, I'm sure.
It definitely is, and I see that with my kids. I mean, if you think about it, what a great accomplishment to learn how to deal with this great big huge animal, particularly the kids that I have that have, like I said, basically never seen a horse. And they show up, and of course I teach them the skills. And I guess that's the other thing I'll say about me. I do have a master's in education. I am an educator. So I come at it every lesson, every time. I mean, honestly, I have lesson plans. I mean, just like when I taught, I go through the skill building, and I'm so grateful that I was able to get a master's in education and to go that far with my own education, because it has helped me so much in teaching these children and in
Mm,
reaching these children. And every lesson is the skill building that they need. But how wonderful for them to go from ground zero, knowing, okay, well, the horse has a front and a back, and that's about it, to being able to control an animal and do things like a little jump or a trail ride, any of those things. And I know way back in 1982, the one thing I remember with the kids, particularly from the Baptist home, is they became extremely invested. Like if I was out of town, I had a boyfriend at the time that lived out of town. They were constantly, because they lived there on campus, going up and checking on the horses. And this is before cell phones. So it was a wonderful comfort to me that I probably had 12, 15 kids that were on patrol. I mean, they were watching those horses. And I would get back, and I can remember, and we had a log, and they had to write everything down, like if they went to feed or if they went to help or whatever. And I had adults helping, obviously, too. They wrote everything down, and I would come back, and they'd have these little reports for me about, well, I saw Sonny do this and that. But
mm,
they learned, so they learned early on, not just record keeping. I guess being a special ed teacher, that's my record keeping, but they also learn to observe, and again, to be grateful for those animals and to make sure that they were safe even when I wasn't there.
mm,
And I would say my kids are a lot like that now. They are very interested in the whole horse, and they're very interested in the care. I'm extremely lucky with that. They're coming out. We have a little show this weekend and a little dressage show. We're doing all those little intro tests. And the girls are coming out Saturday morning and grooming and cleaning and doing all that stuff. I don't do any of that. I teach them to do it, and
mm,
my assistants teach them to do it, but then they're expected to do that. And I haven't had one complaint about that ever. Um, they do it willingly, and it's part of their show team career. And I've had kids miss things at school, miss other things, not just for the horse shows, but for getting ready for the horse shows.
mm,
And that impresses me, because kids today have a lot on their plate. And I know my daughter was raised a whole lot differently than I was. And like you said, you and I are from the age where I'm not sure my parents knew where I was at when I was on my horse. I mean, I was somewhere on the farm or so,
mm,
I had horses from early on. And, it's not like
And
that
a good thing there wasn't any cell phone then.
no. So we had to figure it out.
Yes.
And, I used to have friends tease me about riding in the mountains, and they said it's a good thing your horse can find its way home because I sure couldn't. But I would do that. So, but here's the cool thing about my kids now. Of course, I don't turn them loose on the mountain, but we do take the horses out and ride through the fields sometime and just ride through the fields, just like I used to do as a kid.
Mm.
And so at least they get that experience. Yes, it's supervised because of liability, but they still get to do stuff like that. They get to learn how to go across the creek. They get to go up the little jump trail. And I think that's huge. I've had kids, we got up the top of the jump trail one evening, and a kid had been riding with me for like a year or so. And I thought she was going to cry. She was like, "This is so beautiful." And
Mm.
we just sat there and looked around the farm. And, for her, that was a huge deal because this kid does not live in Bogota. She lives, in a place that you don't go up mountains.
Mm.
So I'm really grateful and thankful that I can give those kids those experiences because that's what made my life so rich. And I hope I can enrich their lives with that. Just the beauty also of being outside. Well, you're supposed to have half an hour every day of that or something. And I think it really does change your mindset.
It does.
So,
Yeah.
you know, yeah, definitely.
So how many horses do you have today to
We have
teach her?
11, and when I was at the Baptist home, I've had the highest number I've ever had was one summer I had 26 for camps. And I had a wonderful friend, Teresa McDonald, who would loan me some tech horses. So we had a bunch of them. Um, I had 3 weeks of camp back then. I have to say, I don't ever want to do that again. That was a lot. 26, even when you've got help, is a lot of horses to actually take care of,
Yeah.
to make sure that they're groomed and hooves are cleaned and all that stuff.
Uh,
All of that happened, but I just remember it being almost to the point where I didn't have a place to tie them all up. I mean, it was really so. I don't ever want that again. I think for a riding program, for me anyway, the ideal number is somewhere between 10 and 15, and you can kind of control that much more. And it's really hard to give them that individual attention that
mm.
they need. What I have right now is kind of perfect because for the most part, I have kids that are very happy riding what I have and sharing, and they do a good job with that. So, but my horses are very pampered. I would think in a lot of ways they're very spoiled. They're used to a high degree of attention. They're highly socialized. Everybody wants to buy my horses all the time. I'm like, they're not for sale. But they are the horses that, people laughed about the one horse we have. It's like, she could live in your living room. I'm like, yeah, pretty much, put a diaper on her, but they get that because the kids and I are constantly out there taking care of them.
Yeah.
So, my horses are wonderful, and I can't brag on them enough because they love those little hands and they love that attention. And my horses stand like statues when those kids are working on them. So I give them a lot of credit. Uh, Horses are very intuitive,
Mm.
and my mare can be a real grouch. I'll just use that word, nice word. And but when I put one of my special needs kids up on her, she's totally about it, and she will carry them around and take care of them. And if she doesn't know what they want, she'll come to me like, "Hey, what does this kid want me to do?" So horses are extremely emotional. I'm not sure people really get that, but they are.
Yeah.
And even I did raise one foal on the farm. I grew up working on a breeding farm. I didn't really ever want to do that, but I did want my mare to have a foal, and I wanted my daughter to have that experience. And even, of course, she was highly socialized. I mean, she knew tricks, the whole deal. But even when she was young, she kind of got it. It was like when the kids were there, she was a paint mare, so I got to give her a lot of credit. But she really she loved the kids too. My daughter and all her friends rode back then, and again, horses are incredible. They're emotional animals. They are not,
Mhm.
I don't know about other farm animals that much. I was raised around dairy cows, and all I remember about them is you stay out of the way at feeding time because they'll run over you. But I will say, and maybe all animals on the farm are like this, but horses are extremely emotional, and
Mhm.
they will have a connection with you. And I don't care what anybody says, they know the difference. When I get on them, my mare can just really be a witch. And I get on her and she's like, some days. And you put a little kid on her and she is docile. I mean, completely docile.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing to see that. It really is.
So, do you have any students that want to carry on your vision, or you do it yourself all the time?
I have adults. I have one friend that I guess we've been together about 37 years. I have, um, I have two local adult students of mine that used to ride with me. One of them has started a nonprofit, and she's very supportive. And we, with that club, we do fundraisers and we donate money back to rescues. And I'm so proud of her for doing that because
Hmm.
that was kind of a vision that we both had. I mean, neither one of us can write a $5,000 check, but we raised $5,000 last year and gave it away to the local animal rescues and Habitat for Humanity. So I'm very proud, and she helps out. And I have another young lady in this area who's actually a professional rider now, and she comes over and helps out. I have two assistant instructors, Megan and Jessica. Big shout out to them. I have known Jessica since she was 7, and she came up through my riding program, and now she's one of my assistants. And I
Mm.
have to say, she and Megan both are so compassionate. And Megan's kids ride with me. And of course, Jessica's kids rode with me. And it's been wonderful to have that, to see that full circle. Again, I'm old enough to see that full circle,
Yeah.
but to have them, particularly Jessica, to give back the way we gave to her all those years ago. My adult horse owners help. They are wonderful and very supportive of what I do. I use a lot of their horses in the program, and they love that. And the great thing about that is if they're too busy for the horse, it really makes no difference. The horse continues to get all sorts of attention and love and care. And I know they appreciate that, but I appreciate them because they come out and help me do the heavy lifting and make sure other things get done. So yes, I have a lot of support. And I'll give a big shout out to my brother-in-law. He maintains a tractor. He does all kinds of things to help us. And
Mm.
if we lose a horse, he's the first one that I have to call, and he is extremely supportive. Loves animals, and I think one reason he loves the horse program is because we do love those animals so much and take such good care of them.
Mhm.
So I have a wonderful crew, and my show team, they just about teach that Tuesday class, and I'm so proud of them. And there's 9 of them, and like 7 of them usually come on a regular basis. And I am so grateful to them and their parents because they get there an hour early and they help basically all the way through feeding. And just about every Tuesday they get to do that. So when we go to shows out of town, like when we go to the horse center and we take horses, they know the horse needs water, they know the horse needs feed, they know the horse needs hay, they get all that. And we've done that once, and they did a marvelous job taking care of those horses. When I showed up at the barn, several of them were already there. The horses' water had already been changed. The hay nets were already hung, and they were getting ready to feed. So my kids, they learn it and they live it.
Mm.
And if you're going to be in the horse world, that's the best way to be. And they're learning all of that, and they practice all that. So, but yes, I have a ton of help. I'm very lucky. I could not do this. You can't have, what did I have out there yesterday? 6 littles on horses. and they had one-on-one supervision and two adult instructors. That's what it takes to do that class.
Mm.
But that's what it takes to do that class safely and for each child to actually learn some skills. Because if I was doing it on my own, there'd be no way.
Mm.
So I have put a small army together that helps me, and everybody benefits from that as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah.
That's great. That's really great to hear. Do you have any uh, what you call it, good words to tell other people who had riding schools, something that you think that would be good to do in a normal riding school?
The biggest thing is just be brave. I mean, we're pretty brave anyway doing what we do. It certainly can be a very high risk sport, but be brave in other ways. Be brave in reaching out and including people. Um, Take some chances on some kids that maybe you're not so sure about. Give them a chance. Don't worry. I think the biggest thing that I see, not just on the instructors page on Facebook, but that I actually hear from other instructors is, oh, they're not going to make enough progress. Progress is measured in a lot of different ways.
Mm.
And progress to one kid may not be progress to another. They're all
Mm.
very individualized. We just had this discussion last night with Show Team. So the thing I would say to people that have whatever riding program is to measure your progress, not just in, oh, they can walk, trot, and they've got their diagonals and leads. Um, did that kid get on the horse the second time and not have as much fear? Did that child jog? That's all my kid did yesterday. He did a little tiny jog up the sideline, but he had never done that before.
Mm.
And that's progress. That's where that big smile came from. That's a sense of
Yeah.
accomplishment. And if the parents push, that's where you really have to be brave. You
Mm.
have to kind of push back. And of course, I have a lot of experience working with the education era and doing everything I did for so long. But if your parents are giving you a hard time, be brave and push back on that too, and say to them, this is your child's progress, and this
Mm.
is why this is good, and not get so caught up. Because I had an instructor who one of my kids went to him for a couple of lessons, and he said, "Well, she's been riding a long time. Why isn't she doing more?" And I was like, this child is probably borderline bipolar and really had a lot of emotional issues. To teach her to ride a horse was huge.
Mm.
And so to me, she was at the pinnacle of her riding. And she did go on and do more things, and that's really wonderful. But to take someone who's struggling emotionally and to get them to the point where she was at was really huge. And it took a lot. It took a lot of help and support and bad days and
Mm.
pouting and happy and the extremes of all those emotions. And my horse had to absorb that and work through it, and she did too. So to me, the question is not, well, why aren't they doing more? The question is, what are they doing and how great is that compared to where they started?
Mm.
And if your student can jog up the line, even just do that.
Mm.
Sometimes that's huge for a kid that's never done anything like that.
Mm.
So I would say be brave, give yourself that opportunity. You're going to find there's so many rewards in teaching. That is the greatest one. That's the one that you take with you, and that's the one you're going to remember. I know you got to pay the bills. I get that. I really do. I've been doing this a very long time. Horses are not cheap, and I have to pay the bills too. But sometimes it's not just about that. And if you get your parents on board, what you'll start to do is take a deep breath and say, this week, this is what we accomplished. And maybe it's not what everybody else accomplished, and maybe it doesn't matter.
It
That's
doesn't.
not
It doesn't.
really.
No. As long as the kid is happy and satisfied and love the horse, why all these? Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. If they're safe and they get through the lesson and they've done a couple of skills and they're good, and I do have wonderful parents right now
Mm,
who, understand that. But I would say that for all riding programs, just give that kid that chance. And, you have kids out there that want to ride, but then they actually get on a horse and they're like, wow, this is big.
mhm.
Any of those accomplishments are huge. I
Yeah.
mean, if we could just go back and remember, I was always one of those I'd climb on anything kind of kid.
Yeah.
But,
Me too.
there's, yeah, I don't know if that was good or bad, right? But some of us were like that. But when I think about it and I go back into a 9-year-old's mind and I look at it and I think, that really is an accomplishment to get on something
Mhm.
that big. And because I don't want to get on an elephant. I don't want to, I don't want,
No.
I understand that. I wouldn't get on
Mm,
an elephant anyway, but do you know what I'm saying? And so, I would wish for all riding programs that that little kid that comes through the door that's not like me and wants to jump on everything, that they give them a chance and that they measure their progress, not so much what the other students are doing, but in what that child has accomplished,
mm,
and report that back to your parents and talk about that if you need to, because most parents will buy into that if they know it's helping their child. And if you have one of those extremely difficult parents, I'll just send you some prayers and blessings because I know they're out there too. But sometimes what I have found through the writing program and through teaching special ed is a lot of times when you help the child, you help the parent.
mm,
And the parent starts to realize that their kid is more capable than what they ever thought.
mm,
And it takes a burden off the parent. And I'm working with one now, and we're kind of going through some of that. And there were big smiles yesterday, and I could sort of see a little release of just tension because, this kid accomplished something and it wasn't a meltdown. It was fine.
mm,
So there's your achievement. That's worth every penny that parent would ever pay you. And acknowledge it and give yourself credit. Give yourself credit and your program credit for helping
mm.
those kids. So that would be my words of encouragement.
Great, great. So if somebody wants to come to you and write, do you have a Facebook page or a homepage or something like that?
We do. We're the Virginia Blue Ridge Riders. We're a very humble little program. We certainly don't compete on any big level with anybody. We do local shows and ETS and stuff. We're fortunate we have trail rides. I have everything from 5-year olds all the way up to father daughter,
Hmm.
pairs that come and ride. I do have adults. I love teaching adults. They're so different. The kids are so much easier. But the adults, it's so satisfying because a lot of them, like they've never had a chance to do this or they did it when they were younger. And
Mm,
so I love my adults too. And I'm grateful that God has sent me a few of them because for a long time, I didn't teach a lot of adults. And it's interesting how that's evolved. And there's such a difference in teaching adults and even adult males compared to adult
mm,
females. But they're wonderful. And the one thing I love about adults for the most part is they are pretty grateful to be there. So, but yeah, Facebook and I I'm pretty well known in the community just because I've worked with the school systems forever. But people do not seem to have a hard time finding me. I've been very, very busy, especially since I retired. This was my retirement choice, was to go back and teach a few lessons. That's not the way it's worked out. It's ended up being quite a bit, but I think there's a real need out there right now for stuff
mm,
like this. When we got through some of the COVID, at the end of COVID, I started teaching again. That first year I did not. I kind of followed all those protocols. But when I went back is when I really started to see it flourish, at least for me.
yeah.
A lot of my students come through word of mouth. But I do have a Facebook, thanks to my wonderful Jessica who set that up for me. And you certainly can access that and see all kinds of pictures of beautiful children riding beautiful horses.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for telling us about this. It was
Thank you.
very interesting and nice to hear uh, that it have been for a long time, because it seems to me that therapeutic riding or is a new thing, but it isn't. So
No, it's been going on for a very long time, and
yeah,
I'm proud to just be hanging in there. So,
great. Thank you
yeah.
so much for coming here today, and
Thank you, Ann.
thank you to all of you out there who have been listening and seeing this. And please subscribe so we can reach more nice people out in the world who loves horses. Thanks so much for today. Bye
Thank you,
bye.
Ann. Bye.